one of the greatest things you have as a new entrepreneur is your ignorance.
My name is Raul, and you're listening to the Daily Edge podcast. Learn the systems and the process that successful businessmen are using to take their lives and their business to the next level. Welcome to the Daily Edge podcast. My name is Raul, and today we have a very special edition. I have the pleasure and honor to be coaching one of the most successful entrepreneurs out there. He's had multiple exits in different businesses, and I call him the Swiss Army in entrepreneurship because this guy knows everything that people need to know in order for you to sell your business, to build your business, to scale your business, and to take your business to the next level. So welcome to the podcast, Mr. Bob Gallo. Welcome, brother.
Raul, thank you. And I don't know everything.
Listen, I've seen you operate and you're humble, but I know that if you don't know it, you're going to figure it out. That's what I know about you, that you're going to figure it out. Like, just give him a challenge. He loves to put different pieces together, and that's what I love about Bob. So today's conversation is going to be about how do we strategically position ourselves in order for us to take advantage of the biggest opportunity that we're going to see in the middle of the crisis. I believe, Bob, that the biggest opportunity that we're going to see in this crisis is to be able to assess businesses so we could either buy it or get ready to sell businesses. And you know, listen, my background is in real estate, and I always knew that real estate was going to create wealth for my family. But now when I hear men like you speak, like, man, selling a business, that's really like what wealth is. Like the biggest payout for every single entrepreneur is when we actually are able to sell a business. But most entrepreneurs don't build their business to sell. And that's why I want to bring Bob into this conversation, because I want people to prepare themselves to actually build an asset that you eventually could sell in the future. And what do you need to do in order for you to, one, assess a business to see if you could buy it, or two, prepare your business to be able to have a sellable asset. So Bob, let's get into the conversation. So the first business that you started, I know you started a long time ago. Did you start the business with the idea of selling the business, or did it just happen because somebody offered you a shit ton of money to buy your business?
Well, so I started out as a financial consultant, and so I had my own practice, but you're always affiliated with a broker dealer, and you're selling different financial services and fee-based planning and all the different things that we did. So I had a partner in that. So we definitely did not start that thinking we were going to sell it. And those professional type practices, unless you build them out with some real infrastructure and add different lines, are kind of hard to sell. So I kind of learned my first lesson in making sure you have the right kind of business, that if you have an objective to make great income, but then also have a day when you can sell it and have a liquidity event, you need to make sure you're in the right space. So we consulted entrepreneurs from a financial standpoint, both in terms of financial planning and business continuity and succession planning. So I always felt like I was sitting on the wrong side of the desk. And so ultimately, when my first, I don't want to say real business opportunity came along, but one outside of financial services, I transitioned out. I wasn't really even to sell it for very much. I kind of sold it for the inventory of cases that we had in there, and then started at that point my first real company, which was my shredding company. In that business, we did think about the sale right from the start, because what we evaluated, and this is my advice for myself all the time and for anybody, is that where you say start with the end in mind, you want to know what a businesses like that sell for. So if you blow it out of the water and you're as successful as you can be in that particular industry or that particular business, what's the upside potential? Yeah. And it's different on different industries.
Yeah, because I think the biggest mistake that most of us make is that we think that we're going to be in this business forever. We think that once we figure out how to make money, once we figure out how to create a service, we actually are going to be here for the long term. But the reality is that the market shifts, the market changes. And unless you're willing to adapt to the market, you're always going to be at the mercy of the what ifs or luck or hoping and praying. And I believe that hoping and praying is not a good strategy, especially if you want to create wealth. So you started a financial planning business. You were able to sell it for for a certain amount of money that at least it gave you the exit strategy for you to actually do something else that you wanted to do. But that business, you start with the end in mind. So when you start with the end in mind, what kind of research did you do, and how can somebody right now that's looking to buy a business start with the end in mind? What's the strategy like? Or what do you suggest somebody right now that's looking to start a business or to look at their business and say, okay, what's my business worth? How can I even find what my exit strategy could be in my business?
One of the greatest things you have as a new entrepreneur is your ignorance. Because if you knew everything that you were going to encounter before you started a business, you never would have started it. So for a new entrepreneur, you do as much research as you can, talk to people who've already been there and done that. But so you want to assess the risk, you want to weigh it. And then if it's right for you, and I think in your gut, you take a calculated risk and then you go for it, right? But you have to be strategic about it. So there's no guarantees. You can do all the research that you want. You can overanalyze things to the point where you won't do anything, which is true in anything in life. But as far as your own business, it's I decided. So I was a financial consultant for 10 years. About 6 or 7 years in, I'm like, I know I'm not going to do this forever. I really feel like I want to switch. And in about 8 years, I started to actively look for the business opportunity. It took me 2 years to find it. And when I found it, I knew it instantly.
There was a gut feeling. It was a gut feeling. It's like you knew this was it.
Yeah, because I had formulated, probably not even formally, kind of a checklist of items that through having looked at opportunities, I knew that felt right to me, that fit my kind of my idea of what I wanted to do. And one of them was I wanted a business with trucks. At one point I said, I want a business with trucks. I kind of forgot I said that. And it was, that's what I got, and they were sophisticated, they were expensive. But what I did learn is if it's complicated and proprietary, if you can get through those obstacles, it will create barriers to entry for others of people who will not go through those obstacles. And it nets you a higher value in the end, oftentimes. And so it's really about formulating some kind of a framework through experience and talking to people and research and all of that you can at least try to narrow down the opportunities that you have so you can get started.
Got it. So here's what I'm getting from this, and I want the listeners to understand that if you're not passionate about your business, if you're not passionate about your company, if you're not passionate what you do, it's going to show in your production. I speak to men all the time that they're not passionate anymore. They're just doing it for the money. And one of the things that I love about you, Bob, is that you are a man that has checklists. That you go through the checklist and like, okay, I need to make sure every single thing in this checklist is done. So with the moment that you lost the passion for your business, you realize that you were not going to be productive in that business anymore. So you set the intention. So the second thing is setting the intention to attract an opportunity and start looking for the opportunity, because opportunities are not going to come and just hit you in the face. You have to be out there looking for the opportunity. And when you start looking for the opportunity and 1% of itself, you were ready for it. You were ready to invest. You were ready to pull the trigger. You were ready to actually take action on it. So once you took action and you said, okay, this is my business. This is a business I want to start with the end in mind and really see how I can sell it. How did you structure it in a way that, because I know a lot of business owners, they think, well, I'm just going to create an LLC and a corporation, and then once I sell it, I'll cash out. Was there anything specific that you did at the beginning, knowing that you had the opportunity to sell it in the future? You wanted the opportunity to sell in the future?
It's really more about, you gotta bring me back. I'm sorry. A thing popped up on my computer. Ask me the question again. Thank God we're not live.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to get is there any specific thing, like, to put them a trust to actually create a corporation, LLC? Like, what is, giving some tactics, or like, if you want to start with that in mind, this is what I would have done. Because partnerships too, like, just maybe get clear on partnerships, on how are you going to structure it. So that's what I'm trying to get.
Yeah. So I got you. So my first business was a franchise. So it was a complete blessing in that the guy who started the franchise was just a pure, entrepreneur. Just, I don't know, it's a good idea. Let's try it. Like I learned so much from him from coming out of the financial financial world where it's highly regulated and you have to dot your I's and cross your T's, and while you're providing a service to your clients, he was just like, I don't know, that sounds pretty cool. Let's try it. And I was like, what are you talking about? Right. So it really opened me up to new opportunities and being creative in your business. Right. But it gave me a structure that I was comfortable with having coming out of a highly regulated industry, that I said, you know what, there's a framework here. I can call other people up. I can develop. And so it did an amazing amount for me personally while I was getting my first real, exposure to being an entrepreneur. And then he's the one, actually, after the company got over $1 million a year in the beginning, he said, look, you want to join a young entrepreneurs organization? And so I did. And then I ended up with a whole nother network of entrepreneurs at all different stages. And so I was just kind of a student of learning how to be as good an entrepreneur as I can. So the relationships that I created, how hard I was willing to work and be involved in problem solving. So in that example, I was I was chairman of the franchise advisory board. I was on the board with the board of the franchise. And then I kept getting elected year after year, and it was like, I'll do it, because really people would say, I don't want to do it, it's a hassle. I was like, I'll do it. I am getting such exposure to, at that point, which turned out to be a couple $100 million a year franchise, and we were one of the top 1 to 3 franchises every year, but it was a big organization, and I got exposure from all of it. So for me, coming from a highly regulated industry into one that had some structure, I grew tremendously during that time. And then I got to a point where I said, you know what? I think I'm starting to see certain trends that are occurring, and our growth was starting to slow down. 4 multi-billion-dollar companies came into a niche industry all in the same year, and the environment started to change, and we saw that coming, and we did some things strategically. We moved our clients onto contracts, 3-year contracts. If they canceled, we got paid out in full, and we over-delivered service-wise, but we knew we needed to put some kind of a buffer between a competitor coming in trying to cut our price and the client having a conversation with us. So our objective, I'll give you this because it's part of the philosophy of my businesses, is I said at one point, I said, look, we want to build a battleship. We've had a great run. We were educating the market on what on-site mobile shredding was. Everybody knows that now. They understand. They didn't that 20 years ago. So we were educating the marketplace, charging a great rate, making great margins. And then as competition was starting to come in, I said, look, and we were over-servicing our clients. Our clients loved us, and we took such great pride in that. And our guys that went in there, and our trucks, all of it. But as competition comes in, you start to get. So I said, we're going to build a battleship. And what that means is if a client gets a phone call, they ignore it. If the guy keeps calling back, they just keep ignoring it. If somebody gets through, they say, I'm working with the best company in this. You should call them and learn how to run your company. Thanks for calling. And they hang up. Then if somebody all the way gets through and meets with them, they say, look, thanks for meeting. I'm not interested. They send them away. If they get a proposal and the client's actually thinking about switching, they call us first. And so there were all these layers that we put in place to make sure that our clients were so happy that they would always stay with us, right? So anyway, so as that occurred, I still got to a point where I was like, this is just not as much fun. And so we had the opportunity to sell it. We took the top franchises together. We rolled them together. We went to private equity. We got offers. Franchise had a first right of refusal, which is the case in all franchises. And franchise ended up buying us back, and we kind of knew it. But there was all strategy in that to try to get the franchise to treat us fairly, and not that we were stuck in a franchise system. So I've consulted franchises, and I understand that world really well. And so there's things that you have to handle differently when you go to sell your company if you're a franchise versus if you're not.
Got it.
And I can go on and on talking about that.
No, I love that, because I think that people misunderstand that because you start an LLC or have a company, all of a sudden, like, you think that is, that's the beginning of your journey, but that's not even the beginning of the journey. The beginning of the journey really happens when you start servicing the client, when you actually over-deliver for the client and you actually get feedback. Because what you did is you got feedback from your clients. You surrounded yourself with other people that were successful and they wanted the best things for you, and that's why you join these different networks. That's why you join different organizations to help you become the best entrepreneur, the best leader. Because if you start switching the entrepreneurship word, because right now everybody's an entrepreneur, everybody starts an LLC, everybody has a business card that puts up a social media post saying I'm a CEO of something. Everybody thinks that they are an entrepreneur, but the reality is that the moment that you are the leader, I believe that's true entrepreneurship. When you have the leadership mentality, when you start thinking, okay, how can I service my clients at such a level that even if my competition is knocking at the doors, they actually, they turn them down. And even if they get the proposal, they're talking to you about it. So that's creating a raving fan customer base. But again, once you create a raving fan customer base, the next step was to see if this was actually something that you could exit, right?
Yeah, it was. The opportunity came, we evaluated it. But you said it a couple times now about people think when they set up an LLC, so if you think setting up an LLC is starting a company, it's not like whatever entity you choose and you set it up, that's like the formality after you've already decided that you want to start a company for all the right reasons, right? So for me, it always comes down, what's the value proposition? What problem am I solving?
Yeah.
And what's the value proposition that we're offering that people will want to work with us over anybody else? And so that's where it begins. And listen, if you haven't done a company before and been in business for yourself, just find something that you do have some enthusiasm for, that you have solving a problem and you have a value proposition. And then know, however hard you think you need to work 10 times as hard.
Yeah.
And you'll it's all of that. Once you get through it and you just keep going and you grow it, I have like kind of 5 things that you want to kind of do when you go and look at selling your business, but you need to look at it throughout, right? So if you've been there and done it and sold your company and you look back, hindsight is so much easier to then assess the road you traveled and learn your lessons after the fact, as well, kind of recount them and then say, this is now wisdom for me as I go forward, right? But when you go to start another one, you'll do it more thoughtfully and there's a great deal more value, but you also know more, which can work to your disadvantage, like I was talking before, because you'll start to anticipate things that are problems, and you just need to keep that in check so it doesn't keep you from wrongfully getting into that opportunity. You'll avoid plenty, but don't have it be an obstacle to getting into it. And if you're unsure or whatever, let it pass, because there's always another one and another one after that. And so you don't want to rush it either.
So share with us the 5 things that you go through whenever you want to sell a company, because I think that once you start the company and once you start servicing clients, once you over deliver that, now once you see that you have something that people want, how will people know right now if somebody's listening to this podcast saying, maybe I should sell my company, maybe I'm tired of this, maybe the virus really is putting up a red flag on my lifestyle, and maybe I want to spend some more time with my kids and my family, and I don't want to be in the grind so much or hustling or building it. I think once you start losing the passion and losing your drive for the company, then you have to start looking at how to exit it or how to sell it, what to do in order for you to actually bring back that passion to your company. So what should owners be looking in their companies to actually either sell it or bring innovation towards it?
Yeah, so I think every entrepreneur, as soon as he starts his business, he's already thinking about selling it, right? And that's actually a good thing. So if you go into your second business, you should strategically consider the exit. Like I was saying earlier about what's the upside on the sale, right? Can I exit? If so, is all the work that I go and do between now and that exit worth it in terms of my exit, right? So, you can't ever do anything. You don't want to sell your company emotionally, right? So if you're burnt out, I would send them to you and say, have them reevaluate themselves and get their head straight, right? Because if you think you're going to be happy after you sell your company versus being in it, you're probably wrong. So one of the things I have is fall out of love with your company before you sell it. So what that means is, right, most people are so attached to their company and it's such a big part of their identity, and it was for me, that when you sell it, you're like, oh my God, like my phone's not ringing. Like I'm not going into the office. I'm like, what? So it's an adjustment. And so if you're not happy in your business and you think selling it is going to be the solution, there's a whole host of reasons why it's probably not going to be, right? So the first thing I would do while you're in your business is, so first thing is fall in love with your company, right? And in that, if you are going to sell it, you want to find something else to replace your post sale identity.
Yeah.
Right. So when I'm consulting somebody and they say they want to sell their company, I go, okay, let's pretend you sold your company, you got plenty of money. What are you going to do the next day? Oh, well, I don't really know. I'll play golf. So baloney, because most entrepreneurs want to do something entrepreneurial after the fact, right? They can only spend so much time at home. They can only play so much golf or whatever they want to do, and they're going to want to find some kind of stimulus, right? So it's, why not go through that and think about it? And so when an entrepreneur tells me, oh, this is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to sell my home. I'm moving to Florida. I'm going to buy a boat. I'm going to, I'm going to work at the marina and just wash boats because that's all I want to do at this point. Or I'm going to, there's a buddy of mine has, he wants me to consult, something to keep their mind stimulated. So the clearer a picture that they paint post sale, I know that they are further along in their desire to sell the company, and for the right reasons. Because a lot of people, it's a waste of time to go through a process if you're not emotionally ready to sell your company, because you won't pull the trigger.
Yeah. And as a side note, we have a client right now that's part of the coaching program, and he's helping selling their company for $150 million. And even through this virus, Bob, I don't know if you heard from him, even through this virus, this crisis, he actually got the deal to the closing table. But the deal fell through at the closing table for that exact same reason, that the founder really started having second thoughts of, what am I going to do with all this money? What am I going to do with $150 million in this, and that's what we have to get real clear about. If your business is your passion, if your business is something that drives and juices you up, well, continue to build it. But if you're already burned out, there's two things that could happen. Number one is you probably are hitting a wall and you can scale it because you having a mental block. And that's what Bob says, come to my program because we'll give you back the edge. We'll help you break through. Or the second is that you don't want to do it anymore. That's no longer your purpose. It doesn't really drive you anymore. And that's the moment that you start thinking, what's my next move? What's the next step? Because two things could happen. Either you sabotage your business and eventually you burn it down to the ground and it's worth zero, or you bring in innovation so you could continue to grow it and then actually sell it and move on. But to stay in a business for the sake of not losing your identity, you eventually be miserable. Eventually gonna
and some of the things you're saying are there's a big overlap on this and the way I consult people on the psychology of selling your business and what you do for the entrepreneur. And like you just said, a lot of really a bunch of gems in there that if somebody's not in your program, they won't get. I get it, and you're 100% right. So part of my training when I was a finished consultant is I would do data sessions. They could last 2 hours, 3 hours, and it would be getting the entrepreneur out of his normal routine to talk about his death. How is he going to plan for his estate? How is he going to equalize assets among kids in the business, kids not in the business, and all of that? So this is something that we resist naturally. And so I got skill sets just from that of learning to ask questions, ask difficult questions, and allow somebody to spend time thinking about a pretty deep question so that we could then really get their objectives out of them to then base a whole financial plan. Anybody could put a financial plan together. If it's not based on the client's objectives, but I mean really their objectives drawn from an emotional level, just like selling your company, a financial plan they're not going to implement it. So that's kind of was my training for 10 years doing that. And I did seminars and I spoke on it and the whole thing. So that was a gift to me to prepare me as an entrepreneur to kind of self-evaluate. And then also on the consulting side of what I do, help. So I'll spend all the time in the psychology. It's so much time in it because it's the preliminary work you need to do to help an entrepreneur avoid that kind of situation that you just spoke about where they get to the closing table. Now, as far as selling the company, if a guy's miserable in it, here's what, so there's only a question: do you keep the business or do you sell the business, right? There's only two things you can do: keep it or sell it. So if you want to sell it, that process is easy. You call an investment banker, you start the process, you go through it. But if you're not psychologically prepared, you could end up wasting time and going through a lot of money and energy to not close the deal, right? So if you're not sure, then you got to keep it. If you're not sure, then selling is not an option. So here's the question in that regard when I have conversations about it. It's what are you doing in your business that's no longer fulfilling? So what I have done in all my companies is that we've grown. We've had a meeting with my partner at different junctures. Sometimes it was 6 months, usually every once a year, and sometimes it was earlier because our business was growing so fast. And a $1 million a $5 million company is a completely different business than $1 million business. A $10 million business is completely different than a $5 million. So if you're growing rapidly or through those changes, your business is changing around you as the entrepreneur. Your business could outgrow your capabilities. So what we did, because we were always improving and growing, we would say to ourselves, let's say, okay, look, we got to hire some people. What do you want to do? Give me 3 things that are right now you feel you're the best at and you really like doing. That's what I would ask my partner every year. And so he'd say, well, I want to keep selling and I want to do this, I want to do that. All right, great. And I was in sales too. You are in the beginning, you're everything, right? But you have to be the best salesman. So when we got big enough, and we tried hiring general managers. This is in my shredding business. My partner was like, look, you have to stay inside because we keep selling it and we keep putting all this business inside and they're messing it up operationally. I said, I'll go inside. I'm still going to have to do something selling to keep my sanity, but you have to just focus on selling. As long as you keep growing the company, I can go inside and I'll do all what needs to be done to support our promises to our clients that our salesmen make, right? So we would do that and we would evolve as entrepreneurs into our unique abilities. And then we would, whatever we peeled off, we would hire people who had those unique abilities. And that's how we would build the strength of the foundation of the infrastructure of our company, right? So ultimately, and all of what I've done, I've learned so much from my colleagues, entrepreneurs, and just being able to be in environments that they talk about their problems and then I see how people solve them. And I'm like, that problem doesn't sound like a big deal, but he was in it. So it was hard. And then I became aware of myself being in my own problem, unable to solve it. And then like, well, that was an easy solution. So all of that is really important. It just kind of happens organically when you're in your company. But what I got out of it, now this is the way I articulate it, is your goal is to, and this is one of the other 5, is to put yourself out of a job. So people have said that before, but what that really means is build your business and the support around you so that you no longer have any daily operational responsibilities. A lot of entrepreneurs can never get there because they can't relinquish the control. And advice I got once, it said, you need to trust, it was the 93% rule. I'm like, well, what's that? It's you have to hand something off to somebody and be okay if they do it to 93% satisfaction from your eyes. You have to leave the other 7% up to their style. As long as they get the goal accomplished, let it be that 7% be the how they do it, right? Let it go. And then, so the more you do that, you're just like, delegate here, delegate there. And you can then start to elevate yourself out of daily operational responsibilities. So there's a couple of, and so another tactic in the 5 is know your numbers. So the way you get comfortable relinquishing more and more responsibility is you don't get focused on the task and the result of that task. You go up higher and you look down at the metrics. And as long as the metrics are trending in the right direction, you start to lose sight of the task. The tasks get blurred, and it's not about the daily operational responsibilities. It's about the culmination of many, many daily operational responsibilities handled by many different people that you're keeping your eye on from a metrics standpoint. And now you're starting to grow as an entrepreneur and look at things more and more strategically, not tactically.
Yeah.
And so when you move yourself into a position where you don't have any more daily operational responsibilities, you can then assess if you're happy or not happy in your business. Because I started on this little rant based on the fact that you have a guy that's in his business and he's miserable and that's his motivation to sell. I tell people first, get yourself to the point where you have no more daily operational responsibilities. You're in pure leadership, you're in strategy, you're visionary. You're looking at acquisitions. You're looking at things that you can do with your business that may be more interesting to you, but you can find those inside your own company a lot of times. So why go start something else from scratch? It sucks starting something from scratch again. I've done it multiple times, and it's a lot more work than you remember. So when you're getting ready to sell your company, you cannot objectively assess how hard it's going to be to start the next. So that's where I say you can either keep it or sell it. If you're not ready to sell it, you have to keep it until you're ready. And that strategy that I just described is one that you can get a clearer and more objective head as to whether you're ready to sell your company or not. And you'll be in a much better spot to go through the sale process than if you did it emotionally earlier on.
Awesome. So let me actually say the 5 things that you said right now, because I think those are key. Number 1 is really start with the end in mind. The second one is bring value to or over deliver, create raving fan clients. Number 3 is ask questions and be able to ask yourself deeper questions. Number 4 is put yourself out of business. Make sure that you're putting yourself out of business and you systematize and delegate.
Well, you put yourself out of a job.
I'm sorry.
You don't want to put yourself out of business.
Put yourself out of a job. Well, actually, I was thinking about that. Is like one of my questions is, how do I put myself out of business all the time to be able to disrupt my business? I mean, just the crazy way that I think is what could put me out of business so I could constantly be in the side of innovation. But you're right. Put yourself out of a job to systematize and delegate your business. And the number 5 is keep an eye on your numbers. Know your numbers, because what you don't measure doesn't grow. And if you're not paying attention, I mean, how many entrepreneurs don't even look at the quarterly P&L? How many entrepreneurs are not even know how much they're paying for to acquire a client? How many entrepreneurs are not measuring their statistics? And if you want to sell your company, you have to be a master of your numbers. And I used to hate numbers, Bob. I used to hate spreadsheets. I used to hate, looking at my P&L, because I thought in my mind is if I continue just to make money, everything's going to be okay. But then I started to learn to fall in love with the numbers, to fall in love with statistics. And that brings me certainty, knowing that if I'm putting $1 into my business, I'm going to be able to get $3 or $4 back. And that's the strategy. And if you start looking at what's the cost to running an operation, what's going to cost you to acquire clients, and if you're looking at the cost, then you could look at the upside. But if you don't know your numbers, if you're not systematizing and delegating, if you're not asking yourself the tough questions, if you're not bringing massive value to your clients, and if you don't start with the end in mind, you will end up at the end of the day with a miserable business and at the end not happy. So you have to really start looking at how can you take your business to the next level, not just talking about it, but actually living it and being able to follow through in these 5 steps. So Bob, now that we are in the middle of this crisis and there's so much opportunity, what are the things that you look for or you consult on when you acquire a business? Because one of the things that you said right now, and I completely agree, is harder to start a business, to actually acquire a business right now. And you're going to see a lot of businesses that are going to be for sale because they're not going to withstand this crisis. So what do you look for in a business right now when you're looking to invest or buy them?
It's a lot of the same as you look at when you're assessing your own business, right? So if you're in your own business and you're looking at it, and let's say you've gotten to this point where you don't want to stay in it, you want to sell it for the right reasons. You want to look at your business with a skeptical eye, and this is before you sell it. And if you're going to buy one, you would do the same thing. So, it's harder to do when it's your own business. But as you get better at it, as you evolve to that strategic leadership position of your own company, you've been doing that all along. So that's an important factor. So you'll do that if you do it naturally when you're buying, and you do the exact opposite naturally when you own the business already, right? I was just checking my notes on from what I wrote down what you were speaking about before. But as far as acquiring, you know, uh, the easiest type of business to acquire is one that's got some uh, similarities to yours. It could be
Mm.
a complementary business. So when we had our shredding company, we had 20 trucks. We were spending a lot of money in fuel, and we were spending a lot of money on hydraulic hoses because we had the shredding equipment on the trucks. It was PTO driven. It was 100 feet of hydraulic hoses, and one hose breaks, it's $500. And uh, so as we were going along, I came across an opportunity, and we thought about buying a fuel truck, a mobile fuel truck, and we said we'll fuel our trucks. So we had a service that came, drove to our yard, fueled our trucks, and the guys didn't have to waste time at the pumps. So we were going to buy a mobile fuel truck, do our trucks, and then go out and get accounts and service them. So that was a strategic business to start, and we could have looked at a small fueling company and then potentially acquired that to add that on. So we'd be a decent sized customer for ourselves, and use that as a base to build. So that would be something that you could do as an add-on. The hoses, that was a bigger deal, and I looked at this one and considered it right toward the end of when we were selling it. So excuse me. So it was a big deal because there was about 100 gallons of hydraulic fluid on these trucks underneath the beds, and it powered the shredders and it powered the dump. It was a dump body. So if you got a leak in one of those hoses, your guy's inside the truck, you might not even notice it, and it could be pumping. It happened pumping hydraulic fluid out into the parking lot, and you don't even know it. And so, even though it was environmentally friendly, you did not want the EPA there. You didn't want it to go down a store. It was a big deal. So you talk about earlier, if you want to get into a business, find a problem that somebody has, right? That was a problem. It didn't happen all the time, but if it happened, it created a major issue for us. So it was everything we could do. So we had, cat litter on the truck. We had these different things to, like, if they noticed it, they could put it out there so to keep the spill from spreading, all this stuff. So I was like, well, the better solution, you had to have that for a catastrophic, but the better solution is better preventive maintenance. So we were fanatics about that. We had a mechanic that came in on every weekend and all that. So we would do a lot, stay up on our PM, but sometimes early on, you weren't on top of that, you didn't know, and then we had leaks. So they would come in and these hoses would just rub, and they could start to rub in an area that was not visible. So even the guys checking the trucks wouldn't notice it, but the mechanic would go through much more thoroughly. So we said, we're gonna start changing these things out more proactively. It's going to cost us more money to avoid one of these catastrophic situations. So we looked at a company, and it was a franchise at that point that had trucks that went around and they made custom hoses mobily. So we said, this is fantastic. We're going to look at. So we looked at that very thoroughly, and not only would it have been for our equipment, but garbage trucks, construction equipment, all of that. So it was a completely different business, but it was thought of to solve a problem for us, which we knew other people would have. So we ended up deciding not to do that because we ended up selling the business. But those are two really good examples of two things. One, how an entrepreneur can start another company either while he has his, and then if that other one's more interesting and really, then sell it, and you have something else to already keep your brain, busy. And it's hedging your bet. It's doing something that you have direct experience with. You know the problems, you understand the solutions, you understand the cost and the value proposition, and it makes it much, much easier to start another company and to bridge financially and intellectually into something that will keep you stimulated. And while you have a liquidity event, put a bunch of money in the bank. And so I sold my first company without having started another. And one of the things I just kind of vowed to myself is I wasn't going to do that. I was going to have another company started. So if I sold this when I had a liquidity event, my cash flow that I needed would already be there. It wouldn't be a reliance on assets while I then took the time to start another company. So a lot of lessons come out of those types of things too.
I love it because I think a lot of us, we miss that opportunities, that we want to go for the shiny object. We want to go for the sexy thing. We want to go for like the, what's popular. And the reality is that we got to start looking at what's the problem that we have within our company, and look, how can we actually have a better solution for it? And if you have an opportunity to buy the company or start a business around it, then that could be a different business. Like, I have multiple companies that started out of my real estate company. Then when I start the next level experience, then we have a media company because it complements. So I think complementing businesses is where entrepreneurs should start looking at right now, especially in this crisis. Instead of paying a vendor, create a company, or buy that company, or create your own company that you have a client, which is you. I think we miss that a lot, of like you becoming your own client. And if you could become your best client, then you have something around that company and you could scale it. And what's some of the trends that you're seeing right now, Bob, with this crisis? I know that you're involved in different companies, and a lot of the guys that we know mutually are going into the healthcare business too, because that seems like a hot market. Is anything right now that somebody that may be listening to this right now is thinking, man, I need to get into this industry, or this industry is hot, or this industry is going to be affected? We talk about the restaurant industry, a lot, and we don't know what's going to happen in the restaurant industry, the service industry that right now is suffering. What are some of the trends that you're seeing right now that you could see either a light at the end of the tunnel based on your experience, or for opportunities, as the listeners go in and see what opportunities are out there that I could jump into?
Yeah, I love that question. And if you're going to run to an opportunity based on a market condition, the one thing you can be assured of, probably the only thing, is that market condition is going to change. So if if it's in response, especially now, and all of us have different feelings about the extent to which the country has reacted to this particular crisis, and as states open up, New Jersey has not. We got hit pretty hard with this, but when the statistics come out, I think they're going to be very similar to the other states that have already opened. It's just the numbers are larger because we have a higher, denser population here, like New York City and Connecticut and some other states. So that said, if people are running to something that they think is they're going to need right now because it's an emergent need, I think that's going to pass. Things will normalize to some extent, and you're just going to basically chase your tail. So, but companies who were already in a certain space that the opportunity, this issue occurred, they just made a lot of money. So, but what you can do is you can pivot. So pivoting is a lot different than running to an industry or a business when you see a market condition. So so as one of my companies is a textile company. So we do coated and woven fabrics, which we have manufactured, and we sell direct into the hospitality industry. So as soon as I said the hospitality industry, everybody's like, "Oh shit, he's that sucks for him." And like a lot of other industries, a giant pause button was pressed, and the whole industry was like, we have to regroup. What's happening? So we, we're selling to hotels. Well, hotels literally shut down. So, but what we said was, okay, two things we said. We said, one, what can we do with what our capabilities are? And we're a direct mill source, and we have the ability to provide high quality fabric, incredible technology to the end user. So we said, okay, what can we do with our technology? And then two, what other industries are not affected right now? So we pivoted in two ways. One is we took a healthcare fabric that we had in development that was just timely through all the testing, and it was ready to go. It's a PPE fabric. And so we are focused on taking that to companies right now that have a need for that. And it's been met with great reception, but we were already there. So it was a pivot, not a run to an opportunity. The other thing we did is we asked ourselves the question, which is a little bit more of a bigger pivot, okay, is we said, look, we know our clients, we know what the issue is, and we said, what can we do with the resources that we have to help our customers, who are the hotel owner groups, to get guests back in their hotel? So we're like, okay, so we talked about that. We said, well, guests have to feel comfortable coming back, and the hotels have to demonstrate that they're doing something to deal with this virus and all of that, to get people to feel comfortable coming back into their facility. And this is beyond the limitations that the government and all has put on, social distancing and all of that. Still have to feel comfortable coming and staying. So we started to look, and so the opportunities that came to me, and I have a constant flow of opportunities. And when you're an entrepreneur and you're doing it long enough, you'll always have a constant flow of opportunities. It's nothing you ever have to worry about. So when you talk about assessing a situation, if it doesn't feel right, meet your parameters, let it go. There's another one right behind it. So this one came, and the one was a chemical solution that could be applied within the facility to mitigate the virus, the bacterial buildup, and all of that. Well, I'm like, this is chemical. There's millions of chemicals out there. So long story short, we investigated an opportunity. We went through it. We were trying to vet it. It wasn't checking off all the boxes. And then through my entrepreneurial group, I got referred to an environmental company, and that led to another opportunity. And so we're evaluating right now a pretty exciting opportunity to be able to solve this problem that we threw out there to ourselves, to at least offer to our clients something that will let them treat their facilities comprehensively and allow guests to come back in. Now, I don't know if it's going to go. I know the technology is sound, but I had to go through a couple of technologies that weren't. So, and it's in I don't know anything about chemicals, but I knew our clients had a problem. I knew it affected our entire industry. And I said, if we can find a solution, we know how to market it. So a lot of times you just need to find the scientists that have already done the work with their expertise, and then show them a way, help where it's mutually beneficial to bring clients. Because everybody, whether you're a scientist or what are you, you got to grow your company. And so if you have the ability to network and use an industry that's struggling, find a solution that will help solve. So it was kind of a combination of things. So my recommendation in this environment is don't run, pivot.
And that's what I call you, a Swiss Army. That's why I call you a Swiss Army, because listen, just listening to you just gives me goosebumps to understand that you're focusing on bringing value. And that's what true entrepreneurship is. Bringing value, finding a problem, finding a solution, and you may not know how, you may not know when, but your intention is in the right track, and you don't give up until you find a path. And sometimes the path is not going to lead you to the promised land. Sometimes the path is going to bring you pain, but through that pain, you learn to grow. Through that pain, you learn to expand. And that's what, if you're listening to this, you're watching this, understand that entrepreneurship is a long plan, is a long game. It's not about just doing it once. It's just doing it over, failing and succeeding, finding a path, finding a way, finding the way in order for you to bring more value to the next person. Because that's what happens whenever you know your value. And that's what happens when you know your mission, when you have a vision. And I know, personally knowing Bob, that his heart is in the right place every single time. That's why he continues to attract these opportunities. And what I wrote down here is curious and innovation. That's your edge. It's like you're constantly curious about how to solve a problem faster, and you're constantly innovating in different ways that some people don't even think about. And that's what this crisis has done for every single one of us. Exposes our strengths, but also exposes our weaknesses. And we have to make sure that we focus on our strengths and double down every single day to grow and expand just 1% better, 1% stronger, 1% faster. I've seen you grow, brother. I'm so proud of you. And as we continue to help other entrepreneurs out there find the edge, grow their businesses, sell their businesses, buy their businesses, raise capital, and conquer their fears, that's what true leadership is. Being able to go above and beyond what people expect of us. So thank you, brother. Thank you for sharing your time with us. Thank you for being here. And last takeaways from you, I'll give you one takeaway from me that I'll tell you is that just seeing you grow in the last 3 or 4 years that we've known each other, and seeing how everything is folding for you to actually live your legacy. Everything is unfolding right now when you actually own who you are, as we continue in this process of what we call finding the edge. So I'm so proud of knowing you, so proud of doing business with you, and constantly looking to innovate in this crazy, crazy world. Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
If you like this podcast, send me a text from a community platform at 203-405-9199 for exclusive content and direct access to me, so I can take your life to the next level. That's 203-405-9199. Send me a text now.